Welcome once again to our discussion on principles of economics, and we have been discussing about some important applications of the concepts that we have learned so far. And today we are going to discuss some problems related to the international trade, basically the application of government policies in international trade, and then we will also discuss some important problems about measuring nations' income. So, the first problem that we have in our hand is Mexico represents a small part of the world orange market, right. So, they are asking to draw a diagram showing the equilibrium price, quantity, consumer and producer surplus for Mexican orange market and without any international trade. That is what they are asking. So, let us say that this is quantity, this is price, this is let us say demand, and this is the supply. So, this is equilibrium quantity, this is the price P star, and without any trade actually what will happen. So, that means this is the consumer surplus and this is the producer surplus. Okay. And then what they are asking, that equilibrium price, quantity, consumer and producer surplus without any international trade. So, now second question is, suppose now the Mexican orange market is open to trade and the world orange price is lower than the Mexican price. So, we have to identify the new equilibrium price, quantity consumed, quantity produced domestically and what would be the amount of import. Also, we need to show the change in surplus of domestic producers and consumers. Has the total surplus increased or decreased? So, that is what they are asking. So, when there is international trade and if the world price they are saying is lower than P star, so that means let us say this is P w. So, here P w is less than P star. So, what we have learned from the theory? The theory says that if you open up for trade, the only market, only price that would be relevant is P w. Why this is so? Because no one will then buy at P star if something is available cheaper at the world market. Similarly, if the world price is higher than P star, domestic producer will also not sell in the domestic market, rather they will export to the foreign market at P w, at P w, yes. So, that means a price, world price lower than P star automatically will tell us, that means we will have more demand, demand is here and supply is here, look at this. So, that means this much at P w, the demand is let us say given by, this is O and let us say this is A, this is B. So, at P w what is happening, the demand is much more, demand is given by O B, but the domestic producers are supplying only O A. So, rest of the things you have to, this is the amount you have to import. So, this will lead to import. Okay. Let me give different names of this area. Let us say this is A, this is B, this is C, this is D, this is E, and that is all. So, before opening up for any trade and all, so consumer surplus was given by A, producer surplus was B plus C. So, therefore, the total surplus was, so CS was A, PS was B plus C, total surplus equals to A plus B plus C. Okay. This is pre-trade situation, pre-trade. In the post-trade situation, when the country is open up for trade, what is happening? The price becomes lower than P star. So, more demand than the supply. So, what is happening? Total demand is given by OB, total supply is OA, AB is the amount of import, AB is amount of import. Now, what is the consumer surplus in the post trade situation? Now, you can understand the only relevant price when you open up for trade is PW. So, the area above the demand curve, above the price line, below the demand curve. So, that means this equals to A plus B plus D plus E, that is the total consumer surplus. And what is the producer surplus? The producer surplus is C. What is the total? Total equals to A plus B plus C plus D plus E. So, that means compared to the pre and post, if you look at pre was A plus B and post is A plus B plus C plus D plus E. So, that means change equals to D plus E, change in total surplus is D plus E. So, total surplus has increased, that was the question. So, the new equilibrium price, quantity consumed, domestically produced. So, domestically produced is OA and then quantity imported is AB, as I have mentioned, AB is the amount of import, okay, and total surplus has increased. So, that means as we have learned, trade makes everyone better off. So, here what is happening, when there is a trade, then there is a net gain in terms of social welfare. However, within the country we see that the consumer surplus has increased from A to A plus B plus D plus C E. So, that means this area and this area, these three areas are actually net gain for the consumer surplus. Hello. Yes. So, while consumer surplus has increased, producer surplus has gone down, which was earlier B plus C, now it is only C. But net total welfare in terms of consumer and producer surplus, that has increased. So, this we using this simple diagram we can easily analyze this type of situation of implication of international trade on consumer surplus, producer surplus, amount of import, amount of domestically produced thing. So, one thing we have to keep in mind that the moment a country opens up for trade, the only relevant price is PW. So, PW is the only relevant price. Why this is so? Because no one will buy at a price higher than PW, no one will sell at a price lower than PW. That is very simple. Okay. So, in case the world market is lower than the domestic market, world price is lower than domestic market, as is the case described here in the context of Mexican orange market. So, that means domestic consumers are actually getting orange at a cheaper price due to import. That is why consumer surplus is increasing. Why the consumer surplus is increasing? Because existing customers will buy more. Some new customers may also start having oranges because the price has gone down. However, from the producer's point of view, since the country started importing at a lower rate, they also have to sell the orange. Mexican orange producers also have to now sell orange at a lower price. So, what they will do? They will reduce the supply, right. Earlier the supply was OQ star, but now the supply is only OA. So, supply has gone down. So, what will happen? Because of this, some existing customers will leave the market, those who will still supply, they will supply less amount, as a result of which producer surplus has gone down. That is the analysis. Now, we come to the next question. Assume the United States is an importer of televisions and there are no trade restrictions. This is an open economy we are talking about. US consumers buy 1 million TV per year, 10 lakhs TV per year, of which 4 lakhs are produced domestically and 6 lakhs are imported. Suppose that a technological advancement among Japanese television manufacturers causes the world price of TV to drop by $100. So, how will this change affect the welfare of US consumer, producer and total surplus? Okay, that is the question. So, let us once again draw the diagram. So, let us once again draw the diagram nicely, that will help us. So, this is Q, this is P, this is the demand for television, this is the supply of television. So, what they are buying? Question is, they buy total 1 million, out of which only 4 lakhs is produced domestically. So, that means this is a case of import. Okay, let us say this is P1. So, this is the total amount, let us say this is O, this is A, this is B. So, OB is actually the total consumption, which is this is the total amount, OB equals to this is the total TV purchased by the US consumers, okay. Number of TV bought, out of which OA is actually domestically produced. So, that means AB is the area, this is the input. Okay. So, OB equals to this, OA equals to domestically produced, which is 400,000, and this is the import, import equals to 600,000. All right, this is the case. So, now what is happening? Because of the technological advancement, price falls by $100. So, what will happen? Let us say this is the new price P2. Okay. So, at P2, let us say this is let us say R, and this is let us say T, and P2 minus this is actually P2 minus PS, this is actually P2 equals to, I can say that P1 minus $100, that is P2. All right. So, what will happen then? Let me give names A, B, let us say C, D, E, F. These are all the names what I have been, that is the name I am giving, right. And now we need to analyze what is happening. So, when the technological advancement happens in Japanese, so price falls from P1 to P2. So, obviously, when price falls, then the import will increase further and domestic production will go down even further. Earlier it was OA, now it is OT, this amount. Okay. So, what they are saying that how will this affect the US consumer, producer and total surplus? So, previously when at P equals to P1, what was happening? Consumer surplus was, CS was actually this amount A. I can give this also as some name, let us say these A plus G, price above area above the price line, below the demand curve. So, consumer surplus is A plus G, and the producer surplus PS, when P equals to P1, so that was basically B plus F. Okay. Now, when P equals to, at P equals to P2, what is happening? CS is actually equals to, consumer surplus has increased. What is the consumer surplus now? A plus B plus C, A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus G. This is the consumer surplus. So, area above the price line, below the demand curve. So, at P equals to P2, so consumer surplus has increased substantially. Earlier it was only A plus G, now it is A plus B plus C plus D plus E. So, that means there is a net gain by the area B plus C plus D plus E. So, B plus C plus D plus E, these areas, it shows the net change in consumer surplus. Consumer surplus has increased. What is the producer surplus now? Producer surplus is the area given by the area F. This is the producer surplus, this small triangle. So, that means compared to the earlier situation when P equals to P1, we can see that that time producer surplus was B plus F. Now, B has gone to the consumer side and producer surplus is only F. So, that means producer surplus has gone down, consumer surplus has increased. Again, if you take the total, so here total was A plus B plus G plus F. And now, when P equals to P2, total is basically, how will you get the total? Total is now A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus G plus F. So, this is the total. So, if we strike out the common elements, so that means compared to the previous situation, total was only A plus B plus G plus F, A plus B plus G plus F. So, that means total surplus has actually increased by the area C plus D plus E. Okay. So, total surplus I can measure the change equals to C plus D plus E, that is the change in total surplus. Okay. And this change is basically going to the consumer side, because this is a case of import. We have to keep in mind, whenever there is an import, consumers are getting the price at a lower rate. So, that is why consumer surplus goes up, producer surplus go down. That is exactly happening here. Producer surplus earlier at P equals to P1, it was B plus F, but after price becomes cheaper, P equals to P2, it is only F. And consumer surplus, which was earlier at P equals to P1 A plus G, now it has become A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus G, the entire big triangle above the price line P2, below the demand curve. So, there is a change by this area C plus D plus E. Now, the question is, if the government responded by putting 100 tariff on imported TVs, what would this do in terms of revenue generated and deadweight loss? Would it be a good policy from the standpoint of US welfare? Who might support this policy? So, this question is very important. Country was already importing, and then there is a price drop because technological advancement happened in the US, in Japan, and as a result of which the price of TV has gone down by further $100. So, that because of that import has again increased. So, when there is an import has increased substantially because of this price drop, so US manufacturer will lose actually, that we can see by this analysis. Producer surplus has gone down drastically, and it is only by the area F. And we have also learned, when we have discussed about trade theories, since the loss is borne only by few sellers, they may form a lobby and persuade the government to take anti trade policies. So, they may ask that please protect the industry, because we cannot survive in this environment. So, to protect the US television industry, now the government has taken a policy, imposed a $100 tariff. Okay. So, what will happen? If the $100 tariff is imposed, then price will again go back to P1, because P1 minus P2, the difference is 100. So, if P2 plus, the policy is P2 plus the tax or tariff equals to, that means P1, because T1 equals to 100, that is very simple, and P2, P1 minus P2 equals to 100. So, that means the moment the tariff is imposed, so price will again go back to the previous level P1, and what will happen then? Again we are at P equals to P1, we have analyzed what is the consumer surplus, what is the producer surplus, but since this price is going back to P1 because of the imposition of tariff, this will create some new dimensions, some new things will happen, and those things are interesting. When the tax is imposed, so P2 minus P1 is T1, so that means basically this is T1, T, the tax amount. So government will generate some amount of revenue. Okay? So what would be the revenue? Import will now reduce to the previous level AB. Okay? Since now the tax is imposed, government will generate this amount of tax revenue. So what we have to write here, that after imposition of tax or tariff, after imposition of tariff, that is the question, after imposition of $100 tariff, now price will go back to P1. So revenue, government revenue will become the area G. So sorry, this is not G, this is given by D in our diagram. What will happen to consumer and producer surplus? So that means this area was earlier actually at P2, if you look at this area was there in consumer surplus portion. Now it is going to the government's pocket, and consumer surplus is again now becoming, this is P1, so A plus G, above the price line, below the demand curve. Okay. And producer surplus is becoming B plus F, but what is happening to these two triangles C and E, which was earlier at P equals to P2, the C and E, if you look at C and E, they were part of consumer surplus only, but now it is no longer part of consumer surplus, because consumer surplus is now A plus G. So what is happening to this? And it is not going to the government's pocket as well. Government is able to capture only the D portion from the consumer in the form of tax revenue or revenue generated from a tariff. Okay. Neither it is going to the producer's pocket, because producer surplus is now B plus F, which was there earlier at P equals to P1. Okay. So, a import tariff is actually causing a loss in consumer surplus by the amount C and E, these two small triangle, which is again not going to the government's pocket as well. So, that means what is happening? It is creating a deadweight loss, and deadweight loss is the area measured by C plus E, these two small triangle. Okay. And if you recall from our previous discussion, the sources of C and E, E is basically what is happening to E. Earlier the price equals to P2, the consumption was up to this amount OR, but when the tax is imposed, the reduction in consumption, there is a reduction in consumption. So, that means some consumers will leave the market, existing customers will buy less amount of TV, and that is basically the source of this deadweight loss. But what about C? C is basically happening due to overproduction, because when the price is P2, world price is P2, domestic producers should efficiently produce only up to the amount OT, but because of this tariff, government is giving some protection to the domestic producers, and therefore, even though efficient resource allocation says domestic producers must produce only up to O2 OT, they are actually producing more, they are producing up to OA. So, there is a overproduction, and this overproduction is leading to the deadweight loss, which is given by the area C. Okay. This is the analysis. And then the question is, would it be a good policy from the standpoint of US welfare? Who might support this policy? So, this is not a good policy, because if you compare to social welfare, there is a net gain of C plus D plus E. C plus D plus E is the net gain in terms of social welfare in the US when P equals to P2. So, therefore, the moment tax is imposed or tariff is imposed, the C and E area has become deadweight loss, because any tariff distorts the market. That is the learning we have. Whether you impose tax on a particular commodity or impose tax on imported good, the result would be the same, distortion in the market, and as a result of which there would be deadweight loss. So, therefore, it is not justified by the US to impose such tariff, because there would be a reduction in welfare post tariff situation by the amount of deadweight loss. However, after imposition of tariff, producer surplus has gone up. Earlier it was only F, after tariff is imposed, it will again go back to the previous level, which was B plus F. Since producer surplus is going up, the producers may support this policy of imposing tariff on imported commodities, and that is always the case, because producers, they lose from imports, and that is why they form lobby and pressurize the government for imposition of tax or tariff on imported commodities. So, producers may support, however, this is not justifiable. Then the last question is again important. Suppose that the fall in price is attributable not to technological advancement, but due to some $100 subsidy per TV by the Japanese government. So, Japanese government is giving some subsidy to the manufacturer, and that is the reason price has gone down. However, in our analysis, nothing is going to be changed. Whether price is reduced due to subsidy or technological advancement, that does not alter our main analysis. So, our analysis will remain same. Okay? So, this is another nice example from trade and government policies. Then now we will explain about certain questions from measuring nation's income or GDP. So, first question, explain why transfer payments are excluded from GDP calculation. Okay, if you recall, when we discussed about GDP, we said that there should not be any transfer payment in GDP. What are the transfer payment? Transfer payment means, suppose government is giving some kind of uh, support, financial support to the unemployed people, or they are giving some insurance coverage to the older people, or a country is receiving some kind of foreign aid, or individuals are receiving some gifts. All this transfer does not involve any production or any value creation in the GDP. So, what is GDP? GDP is the value of all marketable goods and services, final goods and services. So, that means to be qualified for an item to be included in GDP, there should be production of goods and services, therefore, value creation. But simply transferring money from one hand to another, it does not create any output, it does not create any value. That is the reason transfer payment are not included in GDP, because no production or value creation. Okay. So, transfer payments are not included. Then coming to question number 10, what components of GDP, if any, would each of the following transaction affect? Okay. So, GDP, now let me write GDP denoted by Y equals to C plus I plus G plus net export. So, C is the consumption expenditure, I is investment, G is the government spending, and NX is the net export, export minus import. So, out of these items they have given certain items, we need to understand these type of items, whether they will cause any of the components to change and thereby change in GDP. So, this is GDP. So, a family buys a new refrigerator. So, a new refrigerator means what is happening? Consumption. This is basically purely a household consumption on household appliances. So, definitely it will cause a change in consumption and thereby an increase in GDP. Any type of consumption, whether you are buying a new refrigerator or new car, only thing is that it should be new. Okay? It should be a new refrigerator. Mr. Sen buys a new house, and if you recall, when I spend on housing, that is not consumption, that is basically investment, because that creates a source of future income. Mr. Sen can use that house for his own purpose, okay? And when he is staying in his own house, he is saving the rent, okay? Otherwise, he has to spend that money for renting. So, that is creating some amount of income. If he gives for renting, then he will get rent from someone else. Because of all these things, if you recall, we said that purchase of new house is basically an investment, because it generates flow of income. So, therefore, investment will change and thereby GDP will change if somebody purchases a new house. Is this clear? Now, Ford, item number C, Ford sells a Mustang from his inventory. What will happen? When Ford sells the Mustang, obviously somebody is buying it, so consumption will increase. Buying a vehicle means consumption will increase, but inventory is going down because it is not a new car, it is the car sold earlier, manufactured earlier, but not sold in the market, therefore, it was there in the inventory. So, selling a car from inventory is basically mean you are running down your inventory. So, consumption will increase, C will increase, but I will go down by the same amount, investment is going down. As a result, GDP will remain unchanged. Okay? When I am saying the car, somebody is buying it, consumption is increasing, inventory is running down, investment is going down, so net impact is 0. Okay? So, this is very interesting. And then you buy a pizza. So, again when you buy a pizza, it will increase your consumption. Any type of this type of expenditure is basically consumption expenditure. So, consumption will increase, GDP will increase. Tamil Nadu repaves NH 44. What is this? So, this is basically government is spending money for providing public infrastructure. What is that expenditure? So, that means this is the expenditure, G will increase, this part will increase. Government expenditure, G increases, and as a result of which GDP will also increase. Any type of government expenditure, please keep in mind that belongs to G, and if that is increasing, GDP will also increase. You buy a laptop imported from China. So, what will happen? Your consumption will go up, but the net export will go down because that is not produced in your own country. You are buying the imported laptop, net export will go down. Therefore, GDP may remain unchanged. One component is going up, another component is going down, GDP remains unchanged, net export is going down. Okay. Honda expands its factory, and one more thing, sometimes economists they may say that buying a laptop may increase may not be treated as consumption, may be investment. Suppose you have a printing house and that laptop is used in your printing house, publication house. So, that means that is considered as an equipment for your business. So, instead of C, we may say that buying a new laptop for these purposes will result in increase in investment. This is kind of investment you can think of. A new laptop, investment will go up, GDP will go up, but net export will go down, GDP will go down. So, net impact on GDP may remain unchanged. Then the last item, Honda expands its factory in Tamil Nadu, what will happen? So, this is very simple. When Honda is expanding its factory means buying new machines. So, plant and machinery investment, this is nothing but investment. Okay. So, when Honda is expanding, the investment will go up. Then the next question, a farmer grows wheat which he sells to a miller for $100. The miller turns the wheat into flour which he sells to a baker for $150. This is $150. The baker turns wheat into bread and he sells it to the consumers for $180 and consumers eat the bread. This is very interesting problem. So, this example shows if a chain of production actually. Bread uses the intermediate input flour and flour production requires intermediate input as wheat. But if you recall, GDP considers only the value of final product, intermediate products are not included. Okay? So, therefore, without doing anything we can understand what is the final product here. Final product is the bread because consumers are eating bread. So, value of final product is $180, that is why blindly we can say that GDP equals to $180. So, we do not have to consider what is happening to flour and what is happening to the wheat. However, there is an alternative way of calculating this GDP in terms of value added or value creation. What is value added? It is very simple. Value of the producer's final output minus value of the intermediate inputs. Okay. So, for the farmer's value added equals to how much? There is no input information is given here, assuming that there is no intermediate inputs are used by the farmer. Farmer has created a value of $100 because that is the price he is getting from the miller. So, this is $100. Now, for the miller's value added equals to miller turns that wheat into flour and selling it to baker for $150. So, that means that is the price of miller's final output, and what is the intermediate inputs the miller bought? It's $100. So, value addition is 150 minus 100 equals to $50. And then the miller is again selling the flour to the baker and baker is selling to $180. Therefore, the baker's value addition equals to 180 minus 150 equals to $30. Now, if you add the value addition of these three producers, it will become total value addition is $100 plus $50 plus $30 equals to $180, which I was getting earlier. So, that means in terms of value addition also, if we add the value addition, then also there is an indirect way of calculating the GDP. So, that is the reason we said, now you understand why we said you should not take the intermediate value of intermediate inputs, because then there would be a double counting. If we take the intermediates, then our GDP would have been 100 plus 150 plus 180. Okay? But that is not the GDP. GDP is only the value of the final product, which is $180. If we want to calculate or consider the intermediate inputs, then we have to take only the value added by those intermediate inputs, and if we add, then again we will get the same GDP. So, that is why we found out the farmer's value addition, which is $100. Miller's value addition, Miller's got a price of 150. So, that means Miller added the value by 150 by 100 minus 100 equals to only $50. Okay. And Baker's is adding a value of 180, sorry, getting a price of 180, but he also got the price use intermediate input for 150. So, therefore, Baker's value addition is only 30. So, farmer has the highest value addition. Okay. So, therefore, this value addition technique also gives an alternative way of calculating GDP. Then the last problem for today's discussion, the participation of women in the US labor force has risen dramatically since 1970. How do you think this rise affected GDP? So, now when there is more employment, more participation of women labor force means more employment, more production of goods and services. So, obviously, GDP will increase. As more employment generates more output. Okay. So, definitely there would be a rise in US GDP, but now second and third questions are very interesting. Now, imagine a measure of well-being that includes time spent working in the home and taking leisure. How would the change in the measure of this measure of well-being compared to the change in GDP? So, GDP will definitely increase if more women they participate in the labor force. However, that will result in a fall in the time spent by those women in the home and taking leisure. And if we get a value of those time spent at home and leisure, then GDP is not changing much. That is the major drawback of GDP. More work means more employment, means more goods and services production, more GDP. But if at all GDP has to take care of well-being, what was our idea? We started our discussion saying that since income is the reason for somebody's well-being, that is true at the individual level as well as at the macro level, but we also know that all work but no play makes Jack a dull guy. That means if we keep on working to generate income without taking any leisure, what is the use of those income? I have money, but I do not have any time to spend those money. So, well-being will not increase. To have well-being, I need money definitely, but I also need to spend quality time with my family. I should take proper rest. I should take leisure time. So, therefore, more women participating in labor force, more goods and services, more GDP. But if there is a mechanism to consider the well-being or welfare lost due to less time available at home and less leisure time taken by those women, basically GDP would not change much. Okay? So, not much of a change. Then the last question, can you think of other aspects of well-being that are associated with the rise in women labor force participation, would it be practical to construct a measure of well-being that include these aspects? See, the moment women they participate in labor force, one thing we can understand, women empowerment will go up. More respect or self-esteem respect and prestige for women. That is very sure. However, there is this is the positive aspect, but the negative side is that if both women is also working, that means less time available at home, and who will be the sufferer? The children. Now, the children will have less time to spend with their parents. So, this is one of the major drawback. When both husband and wife are working, then the children will have less time. So, their education, their upbringing, mental growth, everything gets affected, because for a proper mental upbringing, education, so on and so forth, children they do need parents' care. Okay? So, that is something will be severely affected when both husband and wife are working. However, it is difficult to capture these aspects because there is no market for this parent service provided to the kids. Even though we receive the most important service from our parents, unfortunately that is not marketed, and therefore, the value of those services are not included in GDP. And since the value is difficult to calculate also, it is difficult to come out with an alternative measure that can capture these other aspects when women they participate in labor force more and more. So, with this we are closing our discussion today. Thank you.